British Columbia Institute of Technology acknowledges that our campuses are located on the unceded traditional territories of the Coast Salish nations of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh.
Good afternoon and welcome to BCIT's The Crow. I'm your host, Alessio Cusano, and here are your news headlines to 2 o'clock. David Eby's New Democrats say they have nominated candidates in all 93 ridings ahead of the October 19th election, with women making up 60% of the slate. Eby is in Terrace this morning, looking to drum up support in the Skino riding that's being vacated by BC United MLA Ellis Ross, who has announced his plan to run for the Conservatives in the next federal election. Conservative leader John Rusted was scheduled to spend the morning making an announcement in the Kootenay community of Kimberley, followed by a meet and greet 30 kilometers south in Cranbrook. All three leaders are scheduled to debate each other 2 days before advance polling opens. BC's former chief coroner has thrown her weight behind the provincial Green Party's campaign pledge to expand a program providing safer alternatives to illicit drugs in an effort to deal with the province's deadly overdose crisis. Lisa Lapointe, who retired in February, joined Green leader Sonia Fursuno at a press conference in Victoria, where she also criticized plans by the other two major political parties for involuntary treatment of people struggling with addictions. Fursuno says other party leaders have indulged in dehumanizing rhetoric against drug users and an expanded system of safer supply. The Greens are also pledging an evidence-based standard for treatment and recovery, with Lapointe saying there's a lack of evidence that compulsory drug treatment plans pushed by other parties will work. Save Our Streets Coalition is expected to release the results of a new provincial safety poll. Our reporter Sophie Hansen has more on the reasons behind the poll and what the coalition hopes to get out of it.
The poll highlights the pulse of the province on issues related to crime, public safety, addiction, mental health, and the justice system. It was introduced as a response to the increased violence and crime in communities across the province. As election campaigns continue, the coalition says they hope to see the poll results represented in discussion between the parties. Save Our Streets Coalition is a group of over 100 community leaders, businesses, and nonprofit organizations that are committed to seeing governments address public safety concerns. Sophie Hansen for BCIT's The Crow.
Many forms of communication aren't done face-to-face anymore. People can use self-checkouts, order food and clothes online, or communicate with each other on the internet. Our reporter Emily Deneen finds out how this affects teens.
In a study done by Statistics Canada, it shows that 99.2% of teens use the internet. With so many using different ways of communicating, many have left their social skills lacking. Leslie Marcotte works at Excellence Seminars where they teach teens to find self-worth and encourage them to gain leadership skills. Marcotte says that communication with teens is changing.
That term keyboard warrior is a great example. Someone can get behind a screen, not face-to-face with someone, and feel comfortable saying all kinds of things that they would never say looking someone in the face. And I think it's a theme in any kind of personal growth and development work where it's learning how to become more comfortable with feeling uncomfortable.
Marcotte has also said that teens avoid discomfort like the plague. Emily Deneen, BCIT's The Crow.
The employer for Metro Vancouver Handydar workers says it's pleased a 3-week strike is ending after workers voted to ratify a new collective agreement. Transdev says it expects service to return normal by Friday. That's after Alameda Transit Union, Local 1724, says members voted yesterday to ratify the deal, saying it gives them a significant wage increase. That'll also help address staffing shortage the transit service has been experiencing. About 600 Handydar employees started strike action on September 3rd, pausing service except for essential medical trips. Now onto the weather. It has heated up out there with temperatures reaching 23 degrees. However, there is a bit of wind, so put a jacket on if heading out. Those were your 2 o'clock news headlines. I'm Alessio Cusano, and you're watching BCIT's The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretnero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
The British Columbia Institute of Technology acknowledges that our campuses are located on the unceded traditional territories of the Coast Salish nations of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh.
Good afternoon, I'm Lauren Achille, and this is your sports update to 210.
In football, retired NFL quarterback Brett Favre told a U.S. congressional committee today that he has been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Sagar Magani from the Associated Press has more.
Former football star Brett Favre says he's been diagnosed with a degenerative disease. The Hall of Fame quarterback testified before a House panel about a welfare misspending scandal in his native Mississippi and told lawmakers he was an investor in a biotech company with ties to the case, a firm he believed was developing a breakthrough concussion drug.
You'll understand why it's too late for me because I've recently been diagnosed with Parkinson's.
It's unclear if Favre's Parkinson's is connected to his football career. He estimates he suffered thousands of concussions in the NFL. Favre is not facing criminal charges in the scandal, but says efforts to blame him for it have hurt his good name.
Worse than anything I faced in football.
Sagar Magani at the White House.
In football, the BC Lions have announced their annual Orange Shirt Day game on September 27th. Our reporter Ryan Sheridan has more on what the Lions are doing to honor the Indigenous community.
After the discovery of 215 unmarked graves at a Kamloops residential school, the Lions organization created the Orange Shirt Day game. They strive to spread awareness and raise money each year. Matt Baker, the senior manager of communications at the BC Lions, tells us what we can expect from the game this year.
The orange jerseys, so those will be worn in warm-ups by the players and auctioned off to give money to the Orange Shirt Society. So 10,000 fans get a free T-shirt. We're also hosting a couple of hundred residential school survivors and their families. We give them free tickets. A big pillar of the BC Lions brand is to build better communities, and this just serves as an extension of that.
The event will also feature a marketplace for Indigenous artists to showcase and sell their work. Ryan Sheridan, BCIT's The Crow.
Moving on to baseball, the Toronto Blue Jays have reinstated Aurelvis Martinez from the suspended list. He was suspended for using performance-enhancing drugs back in June, which led to the end of his season. He's been added back to the 40-man roster and optioned to the spring training complex. An outfielder, Dalton Varsho, has also been transferred to their 60-day injured list. He had undergone surgery for his right shoulder earlier this week. Moving on to soccer, Pedro Neto has scored his first goal since signing with Chelsea FC. The 24-year-old forward scored in the 48th minute in a match today against Barrow AFC. This was the third round of the Carabao Cup, with the game ending in a 5-0 victory for Chelsea. They will play Brighton this Saturday. Now, moving on to curling, the first major curling event of the season has arrived. The third annual PointsBet Invitational is set to take place in Calgary at Winsport Arena this week. This tournament features 16 women's teams and 16 men's teams from all different levels of curling across Canada. World and Canadian women's champion Rachel Homan is the defending PointsBet champion. Her first game is on Wednesday against Gabby Wood from Edmonton, and Reid Carruthers is looking to grab the trophy once again for the third time in a row. He starts Thursday against Quebec's Felix Asselin. And as for golf, the President's Cup is taking place this Thursday. U.S. team captain Jim Furyk spoke about the passion and drive that golfers have when it comes to the Cup.
I think what makes this event so great is that you see players that are usually stoic, that don't fist pump, that don't show a lot of emotion, and they go bonkers. They run around a green, they fist pump, they're screaming at the top of their lungs. You can't hear them because the crowd's so loud. That's what makes these events so great, and I think that's why both sides and the players enjoy it so much.
And as for hockey, the Vancouver Canucks will play their first preseason game tonight against the Seattle Kraken at 7 p.m. at home. So this has been your Sports Update to 210. I'm Lauren Achille. Thanks for listening to The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow. This is 1680 The Crow, and you're listening to our feature presentation.
The District North Vancouver Firefighters Charitable Society puts on an annual fishing derby that supports two local charities on the North Shore. The Fishing Derby has raised over $400,000 to date for Athletic for Kids and the Seymour Salmonid Society. Over 200 people participated in this year's event, competing for various prizes and raising funds for the two charities. Today, I am speaking with Alex Beachy, one of the participants in this year's Derby, about his love for fishing and the event he attended. When did you get into fishing initially?
So I used to fish with a couple of my neighbors for probably about the last 5 to 10 years, but this is the first year that I finally outfitted my own boat and really started getting into it more myself.
When you say outfitted your own boat, what does that mean?
Yeah, so when you're doing ocean fishing, you need a couple of different parts of gear, such as like downriggers and specific rods and tackle and whatnot. So we had an opportunity to get into a bigger boat where we can get through a lot of the rough swells and whatnot that are on the ocean. So we got the gear we needed, so then we're able to get out and do some salmon fishing on some of the local waters.
And local water, so where do you usually fish? Where's the best spot been for you?
So I'm based on the Sunshine Coast, and from there's different spots at different times of the year depending on what is going on. So this past month, it's been really good in Richmond, right at the mouth of the Fraser River. So we were fishing out there, but then earlier in the spring near Bowen Island, that's kind of where some of the fish hang out. So we were fishing there at that time. Sort of just depends on where the food sources are and what's going on. So at this time of year, the fish are staging, it's called, which is when they're adjusting to the fresh water and trying to get ready to go up the Fraser River. So that's why they hang out right at the mouth. But then at other times, it just is different parts in their cycle.
Okay. And on the day of the Derby, how was the fishing day for you?
It was fantastic. It started out as a bit of an interesting morning because it was insanely rough. It was blowing like 30-kilometer-an-hour winds, so the waves were pretty rough getting out there, and a lot of boats actually backed out because it was a little unsafe for them. And when we got there, it was a bit rocky, but luckily no one on our boat had any motion sickness. So we got into a lot of big fish and got a few nice fish on board. We had one person on our boat that it was their first ever time fishing, and they actually ended up with the biggest fish of everybody. So it was always a lot of fun seeing somebody like that getting their first ever opportunity to check out a new thing like that and really have a good time and enjoy their day hanging out on the boat.
How big was the fish that they caught?
So they ended up with a 27-pound salmon. So it was probably a 30-minute fight to get it into the boat, but they were quite excited when they got it in, and they were even more excited when they got to eat it for dinner that night.
The event, what kind of things go on during the event? Is it just a fishing day, or is there more that goes on?
So it's a fishing day with a whole event afterwards. So you have to be at a marina in West Van for 2:15 to weigh in your fish. And then from there, usually start as soon as sun rises, that you have a full amount of time to fish. You get back for 2 o'clock, you weigh your fish, and then they give out prizes. So it goes by the weight of the fish, and they work the whole way down with a lot of awesome prizes that are donated by different companies and different people to bring the event together. And then with that, they do a full barbecue and do some 50-50 as well as a whole bunch of other things, all to raise money for the different charities that are involved.
You mentioned one of the guys on your boat caught the biggest fish that day. What was the prize that he got for catching that fish?
Yeah, so he was 6th place overall. So he actually ended up with a gift card for Harbor Air. So it was really cool because, as I mentioned, he's not really much of a fisherman. So a lot of the prizes are geared towards people that are fishermen and have boats and could use different fishing gear type of things. But for someone like him, a lot of those prizes would be useless. So it was pretty cool that he had an opportunity to get something that he could actually use himself. So he was excited because he can go spend a nice day on a float plane with either a friend or his wife or whoever he wants to take with him.
What to you is like the best part about fishing? What excites you about it?
I really like just getting out on the water on a nice day and hanging out in the sun, and either with my family or with my friends. It's nice to get to spend some time with everybody. So Sometimes it's just a day hanging out on the water where you catch nothing, and other days you can get out there and it's a lot of excitement and a lot of fun and kind of craziness trying to get the fish into the boat. But no 2 days are kind of the same with it. You just have a good time on the water either way.
Do you have any kind of stories from over the weekend about like some troubles that came when he was fighting the big fish, or any personal stories that you can think of about fighting these fish, trying to get them on board?
Yeah, so I'd say probably the first story that comes to mind was just fighting to try to get to the fishing grounds. It was so rough that we were taking nonstop waves right over the front of the boat, so that was one thing. But then, two, I hooked onto a nice fish, and the downrigger line was still in the water, which is a steel braided line. And so when we got the fish right to the boat, we were having trouble getting it high enough to get the net underneath it, and my line wrapped around the downrigger ball, and it ended up snapping the line, and we lost the fish, which was too bad because it was a nice fish and it was right to the boat. So the whole fight was basically done, but right at the last second we just kind of dropped the ball and didn't quite get it into the boat. But it was all good. It was added a little bit of extra excitement and made it a little fun, so it was good.
And just like stories overall, do you have any, like, what's the biggest fish you've ever caught?
Myself would be probably about a 23-pound salmon. I caught that one actually on Sunday, so I was pretty excited about that one. Yeah, I've seen a couple of different big fish, but that 27-pounder was the biggest fish that has come into a boat that I was on. Over the weekend, the biggest fish overall was a 34-pound fish on a different boat, and that one was pretty cool to see. It's crazy to see how big they really are.
And there's a lot of other wildlife like seals, whales. Did you come into contact with any other kinds of animals, and did they give you any kind of trouble during the Derby or just in general fishing?
Yes, when we were going out there, we came right across a pod of humpback whales. So that was pretty cool. Once again, the other person on our boat had never really spent a lot of time on the ocean, so that was their first ever time seeing humpback whales in the wild like that. No matter what, if I've seen them 100 times, the 101st time is still just as exciting. They're a pretty impressive and beautiful animal. And then we saw some seals at the Derby as well in the fishing area, and we had someone on our boat hooked up to a fish, and they were reeling it in, and they're fighting it, and the seal actually went over and bit the fish and snapped our line and took the fish right from us. So we had that experience with the seals. But yeah, you always see something new out on the water. That day when we were heading back, we actually saw a porpoise too, so lots of wildlife around. It's good to see them still doing well and sticking around.
Yeah, that's awesome. Was this your first time in the event?
No, this is the third year that I've done it, and it's actually been 13 years consecutive that they've done the event overall.
Okay, and what sort of charities are involved?
So it's put on by the District Northland Fire Fighting. So they have one that is the athletics for kids. So that helps put up a whole bunch of different things through their fire hall itself. And then the other one is the Seymour Salmonoid Society. So that's like a hatchery that really focuses on promoting the regrowth of the salmon stocks and making sure that we are doing proper methods in order to grow the salmon population, so we don't run into an issue where we no longer are able to fish and no longer able to provide food for people through salmon.
Awesome. And just for the event overall, what's the experience like? The after party or the barbecue you were talking about earlier, what's that experience like, and what does it mean for you to be involved in an event like this?
Yeah, it's great. They put on a really good event there where everyone has a lot of excitement. I mean, if you catch a fish, you're going home with something as a kind of a little reward, and you're not only fishing for that, you're fishing just to have a good time. That's a day that everyone kind of comes together and has a really fun time and gets to hang out afterwards. You talk about some of your stories from the day and just kind of joke around about fish that you could have caught or fish that you ended up getting in the boat. And then also just, like I said, we raise a lot of money for those charities that they put on, so that's really exciting too.
Yeah, can you just talk about that a little more? Just what does it mean to you to be involved in something that's raising this kind of money for charity? I saw on their website they had said they raised over $400,000 to date. Just what does that mean to you?
I think it's great. Obviously, as much as possible, it's awesome to support charities and help donate money to good causes. And the great thing with this is that we can put on an event where everyone can be excited about it and get involved and really have a great day overall. And the outcome of that is that it also just produces that cash flow for these charities without anyone really needing to do something they don't want to, if that makes sense.
Thank you to Alex for joining me and telling me about the event he attended and his passion for fishing. Thank you for listening to For the Record. Tomorrow we will be talking about wildfires in northern BC. I'm Jacob Fraser for BCIT's The Crow.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the lower mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretnero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning